Hello, today we are talking about book launches and how to make your book launch a big success. I'm Melody Ann, your host, and I'm the founder of Author Nation. We are a community-based publishing system. So if you are a nonfiction author and you have an idea and you want to turn that into a book, come talk to us. We will create a roadmap for you, and then you can come into the community, execute the plan, get all the structure, support, and accountability you need to get your book published and profiting from it. All right, you can grab our checklist at authornation.online, or you can find it scrolling past you right now. It is also in the description. Okay, our guest, Nick Gray, is an entrepreneur and best-selling author living in Austin, Texas. He started and sold two successful companies, Flight Display Systems and Museum Hack. Nick is the author of The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, a step-by-step handbook that teaches you how to build big relationships by hosting small gatherings. Over 75,000 people have watched his TEDx talk about why he hates museums. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and New York Magazine called him a host of culturally significant parties. Let's welcome Nick. Hey, Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about books and parties.
Yeah, me too. But before we get there, I'm just, reading that bio, you have this really like varied life, like lots of different work experience. So how did those all come together? Like what piece of that is Nick that like infuses out to all of them?
I think I like really neat experiences, whether that is hosting a cocktail party or a happy hour or a renegade museum tour like my last company. And I think I've always been interested in marketing and new ways to talk about old things. So new style museum tours, new style happy hour gatherings. I think that's my thing.
So you're always looking for that next venture
Yeah,
or that
I
next
think
new
so.
thing.
I'm curious. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial household, and so that helps.
All right, cool. Okay, so I have to ask 30 seconds. Why do you hate museums?
I think most art museums, specifically art museums, are really boring. And there's these incredible paintings, but today when you can see anything on Wikipedia or online, why do we need to go to a museum for that? And so I was just frustrated that these huge museums felt very boring to me. And I tried with my last company to reimagine the adult museum experience.
All right. Okay. I do like art galleries. And so maybe I have a little bit of boring in me, but every once in a while, I don't know about you, but I'm in a museum or an art gallery and I'll turn a corner and I'll go, because I've
Yeah.
seen something in real life that I've only seen in Wikipedia. And
Yes.
all of a sudden in real life, it makes me go, right?
Yes.
Like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's special and that's great. And I love that. I feel that too now. But I
Hmm.
think my friends and the people that I grew up with, I never really went went to art museums too much. And I think that a lot of people, at least my friends when I was in New York, they don't have a relationship with an art museum. Certain people do enjoy going to them, and I think those people are great, but I was interested in attracting new audiences. How do we
Mm.
get millennials or millennial minded people, now Gen Z, to come to these art institutions and not just get forgotten in the age of social media and TikTok and short form video?
Awesome. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, bringing in new people in this world of, where you can easily get lost in TikTok and YouTube and using those so you don't get lost. So you seem like a real social butterfly to me. Is that true? Have you always been a social butterfly?
I think I am now. I've learned when I first moved to New York, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know
Mm.
how to meet people either. This was over 15 years ago. And I decided instead of going to bad events, I would learn how to host good events. Instead of going to bad parties, I'd bring the party to me. And through a series of hosting hundreds of different formats of dinner parties, happy hours, I ultimately settled on this formula, if you will, for gathering that I think can make anyone successful.
All right, brilliant. And so what was happening in your life then? So you moved to New York and you didn't know anyone. And so the impetus for the book really is you in New York, which is a huge place, and you
Yeah,
sitting there thinking, I don't know anyone, millions of people, and I am no friends. Was
right.
that kind of how it started, that realization?
That started me on my journey of learning how to host a good party.
Okay.
And I went from not knowing anybody to having a full social calendar with dozens, if not hundreds, of acquaintances and close friends that
Yeah.
helped me to launch a multi-million dollar business, Museum Hack. And I don't say that to brag, but to note that there are real business benefits, whether it's launching your book or starting a business, to learning how to host a gathering and to building a network. There are big benefits to that that anyone can get. But that's how I learned how to be a host. But then my book sort of came about from a Google Doc that was passed amongst friends that I had written that was a manual of how to host parties. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I started that. And then I launched it as a book about 8 months ago.
That's a great book story. I love that. It was just a Google Doc I was sharing with friends, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it became a book. I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant. So so many of us seem afraid. I talk to lots of people. It's like, ooh, networking. Oh, I don't want to do that. It's like they don't
Mhm.
like people, or maybe they don't. I don't know. But, or they're afraid. Networking feels vulnerable. And so, do you have any insights in all of your experiences why we are so afraid when the benefits are so real?
That fear is real, by the way. I went to a party last night, a reader who'd read my book. I'm kind of doing an extended book tour now that I'm just relaunching. And I went to one here in Dallas, Texas. And I talked to somebody who was very terrified of public speaking. Many people are scared of public speaking. And he said, I know I should not be afraid of it. I know nothing bad will happen to me, but it's just a very real fear that I have. When it comes to hosting parties, many people are afraid of, what do you think the number one fear is for a new party host, if you had to guess?
No one showing up.
That's exactly right.
Oh,
Yes, yes, you're exactly right. The number one fear is that nobody will show up, or worse, only like 2 or 3 people will show up
oh,
and
that's
see
worse
that
than no one.
nobody else is there, right?
Yes, I'd rather no one show up than one person show up, because at least
Yes,
if no one shows up, there's no awkwardness, right? I feel
ex-
awkward alone, but if one or two
right.
people show up, okay. But I have to say something.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I started author events in Vancouver, Canada, where I live.
Uh-huh.
And my very first author event, the speaker came, I came, and one person showed up. So I have lived that awkward moment, and I just went straight on ahead, like if the room was full.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I did the thing, and I did it again the next month, and I did it again the next month, and we went
Good
from
for you.
1 to 5 to 10 to, and so I get that fear. I so get that fear, and I've lived that reality. And
Yeah.
yet I know that if you don't start, you'll never get anyone, right? So yeah, you just have to go for it, I think.
Good for you, Melody, for just pushing through, by the way, of just absolutely crushing it. That's awesome. I think that that's great that you actually did it through. Um, One thing that I find is using a series of reminder messages and double opt in invitations to boost somebody's attendance list. And
Oh,
folks who read my book say that over 93% of those who say they're going to come actually show up to their party.
oh,
There was
that's
a,
amazing.
there was
Yeah,
a
see,
host on Tuesday of this week who hosted a party in Austin, Texas. He had 21 people who said they were going to come, and actually 20 showed up. So, doing these multiple reminder messages, we'll talk about this, I think, in how somebody can host a successful book launch and ideas to bring. But that is one key thing that you need to know and listen to is you need a series of reminder messages to keep your book launch top of mind.
yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Yes, we are going to dive into that. And I'm going to say, if you're out there and you want tips on making new friends, because we know how hard that is, you can go to www.party.pro/new friends. And Nick has some tips for you there on just making new friends, which is a great way to start even before you even before you have a party. So let's talk about the book. Tell me a little bit about the book.
So the book is called The 2 Hour Cocktail Party, and it's a step-by-step guide or handbook on how you can learn how to host a great event. Now, hosting events and making new friends is something that nobody ever teaches adults. We just assume that we're either good at it or not, or we learn about it through our friends, or how hard can it be to host an event? And I've heard from people that are experienced hosts, they say, wow, I read your book and I actually learned some really good things I'm going to start to do. Or I hear from people who have zero experience and they said, I followed every single step in your book and I just used it as the guide. So my book is about how to host a very small, lightweight gathering, 15 to 20 people, that'll cost you less than $100 to host, that can really turbocharge your life. And seems like a silly word, but whether that means new friends, meeting your neighbors, finding a romantic partner, or even boosting your career, I think gathering in person is a superhero skill that you can learn how to do well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And so why 2 hours? Why not more? Why not less? Why 2 hours?
I found through a series of experimentations, hundreds of parties, that 2 hours was about the right length to keep people entertained, having new conversations, but to also to end the party at a high note. We like to
Mm,
finish events when things are going really well to leave a positive memory in somebody's mind so they'll want to come back the next time you host a party. It helps your referability to end the party on a high note when things are going great and people leave and they say, wow, I met so many people. I learned some new things. It finished in 2 hours. This is great. I'm thankful for that.
yeah, I wish it wasn't ending, right? I'll
Yes.
come back to the next one. Brilliant. I remember when I lived in Japan, I got a party notice and written, this is a long time ago, so they were written, right, written party notice. And I remember it saying, party starts at, party time 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It had a start and an end. And I learned that in Japan, if it says starts at 6, you show up at 6, not 5 minutes before, not 5 minutes
Yes.
after. You don't come late, you show up at 6. And if it says it ends at 9, at 8:55, everyone stands up, starts saying goodbye, puts on their shoes, and leaves. And I thought, oh, this is great. This doesn't happen in North America, right?
This
But
is
I
really
really
good. I love this Japanese style of party hosting. Something that I found was that by listing both a start time and an end time, like you mentioned, helps more people show up on time. And it really reduces that moment at a party that I call the awkward zone. Have you ever experienced that? It's the first 10, 20, 30 minutes when people are trying to be casually cool and show up not right on time, or maybe the person you know the least is the one who shows up first, and now you have to make small talk with them as the host for 30 minutes. When you host a party with a start time and an end time, it compresses that awkward zone and gets more people to show up. I also found, last thing about that, that by having your party only 2 hours, it makes it easier for people to say yes to. And that's
yeah,
what's important, is you want people to say yes and you want them to come. When you have a party that's only 2 hours, it's a low commitment. It's an
yeah,
easy thing for people to come and visit.
yeah. And that's a really great point, right? How often have we said, oh, I can't go because I have this, I have that. It's like, well, if it's only 2 hours, I can fit it into my day.
Right.
It's a really great point. So this book is for new party organizers and advanced or expert party organizers. I remember you said that. So everyone's going
Yeah.
to get something out of the book. But you
Yeah.
want to have a gathering. This is, you want to be motivated to have a gathering. Is it just in-person gatherings, or do you think some of the ideas work online as well?
Some of the ideas work online. We could certainly talk about which ones could work for a Zoom meeting or some sort of online gathering. But the book really is almost exclusively written for in person gatherings. What I think in today's age, where we're digitally saturated, where we have plenty of Zoom meetings, but we don't even know our neighbors, that's my goal, is to encourage a whole new generation of hosts.
Yeah. Brilliant. I love that. So, and they're small gatherings. So I have kind of a two-part question. One, why small gatherings? And second part, how do small gatherings turn into big relationships?
Small gatherings, number one, because they're easier to host and you can create more connections. At a gathering for 15 to 20 people, that's the perfect size in my experiments. From hosting hundreds of parties and working with hundreds of people to host their own, less than 15, and you really don't have enough energy that's in the room, you don't reach a critical mass of conversations. More than 20, and things tend to get a little too loud, a little too busy, or hectic for a new host. Also, when you run a round of icebreakers with more than 20 people, it can really drag on because a good icebreaker is a fast icebreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, please.
Let's talk about icebreakers. So if you're looking for icebreakers, you can go to www.party.pro/icebreakers. I love that you have all these, all these resources for people. Thank you so much. This is really cool. Let's talk about icebreakers. 15 people, 20 people show up and you're all just standing there. You may not know each other, and icebreakers, please.
Yes, what happens? So I think that a lot of people do icebreakers the wrong way, and that's why they get a bad reputation. At the beginning of an event where there's not a lot of rapport built up, when people are a little cold and stiff, I want an icebreaker that simply gets them talking and gets conversation moving and lets people say who they are and introduce themselves. The icebreakers are a conversational crutch to help new introductions happen. And so, one of my favorite icebreakers at the beginning of a night, when there's not a lot of rapport, when people are cold and stiff, is to just ask people, say, hey, everybody, it's hard to make new friends, meet new people as adults. We're going to do a round of icebreakers. All you have to say is your name, what you do for work, or how you spend your days, and one of your favorite things to eat for breakfast. What's your go to? What do you like to eat? Why this is a good icebreaker is that it doesn't take people a long time to think about. They don't have to stress for a creative answer that they might be judged on. And I want something that's easy and that's fast. And everybody chose or didn't choose to eat breakfast that day. They know. And also, breakfast has a little bit of a positive memory for some people, and it expresses a bit about their personality. So at the beginning of an event, I do that one. Now, the secret is it's not about their answer, right? It's about hearing them talk. What do they do for work? Shares a little about their personality. And it might give someone an excuse to go up and start a new conversation. So that's one that I like at the beginning of events.
I like that. What I'm just going to say, so icebreakers give people something to talk about with somebody they want to meet, right? It's like, oh, so you said you ate this for breakfast. Da, da, da. It's one of my favorite breakfasts. It just gives you a reason, no matter what
It's
the
a
question is,
silly, yep,
right?
yep, yep. It's a silly excuse. It's a conversational crutch.
I love it. All right. So let's talk about using some of these ideas in book launches. So did you use some of these ideas for your book launch? And if you did, how did, tell us a little bit about your book launches based on the book.
Yes, absolutely. I did perhaps the weirdest book launch for my book in that I did one big one on paddle boards in Austin, Texas. Maybe the first book launch that happened on Town Lake in Austin, Texas on paddle boards. And you know what? I had everybody wear waterproof name tags. Everybody had to buy my book. And we had some great photos. And more importantly, we had a lot of fun because for me, this book has been a labor of love. And I wanted to do something truly fun for my book launch. What I did, though, that was interesting was I followed it up with a series of smaller book launches. And now I'm going on book tour where I'm doing a lot of smaller events. I went to one last night where I sold a couple books, and I'm real happy about that. But for my launch itself, it was for me, and it was for about, maybe 30 or 35 of my friends. And you better believe, though, that I made sure that everybody bought my book and showed up to support me.
So what I hear you saying is, if you have a book and you want to do a book launch, put the book aside just for a minute. Stop thinking about, I've got to talk about the book and I've got to sell the book. And I've put that aside just for a moment and think, what can I do with everyone I know that would be fun, that people would want to show up for? And then how can I integrate my book into that? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think for many people, they're not used to hosting gatherings. And this book launch may be the first time that they've gotten and reached out to a lot of people. And so I would focus on adding value first. How can you add value with an incredible experience to people? Because what I wouldn't want is just a boring reading. No offense to people who do that, but to me, that sounds pretty boring. And what I would want is to leave people with an impression, to have a great time so that they felt almost like they owed me something to help me support my book. I want them to have a really positive memory and thought about my book.
Yeah, which leads us into the question, so you do this book launch with these 20 people. You make it really fun for them, and they've all bought your book, but you actually want more sales. So how does this small gathering lead to the bigger piece?
The larger, I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. The
Yes.
larger piece of doing more book launches or more book sales, or what are we thinking about?
Yes, whether it's more book launches or more book sales. Like, so one thing I always tell authors is you don't just do one thing and let it die. You want to build momentum. So I've
Yeah.
done a small gathering. I've brought 20 people together. They've all bought my book. Now, what do I do next? Like, what's my next step?
So I'm sure you know this as an author and as somebody who works with tons of authors, marketing your book is a full-time job, and you can't just launch your book and then hope it's successful. This is now something that you do. Congratulations. What I would suggest somebody do is to start to host gatherings like this on a regular basis, where you get a chance to add value first by hosting a gathering where they can meet new people, but you also get a little bit of a platform to talk about what you do, which is you're an author and you're sharing your book, and you get to give that book a shout out as the author. You get to be the host of the party who's also the author of this book, and you can have your books there for sale. Just because we have one book launch doesn't mean you can't host multiple book launches or book tours or a book party. Now, I wouldn't call it that, right? I would call it a new friends party or something like that. Most of the time I call my parties cocktails and icebreakers. And I mentioned to people, hey, I've met so many interesting people in town. I'd love to get folks together for a little drink or a happy hour. Come say hi. My name is Nick Gray. I wrote this book called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. I'll have some of my books on display and I'll talk about it for a minute or two. Doing that and having a multiple of these events, I think for most authors would be great because it keeps your book top of mind. And that's what's important. You don't have to spend the whole night talking about your book, but it keeps it top of mind and people will think about it and remember you.
Yeah. And when you told me about the paddleboard, my thought was, what great images for like Instagram. What a great thing to talk about on Facebook. Like,
Yes.
if I were looking at your social media and you're like, oh, Nick went and did this paddleboard party for his book, I'd be like, he's cool. That's fun. I want to know
Yes.
him. What's this book
Yes.
about? So I'm thinking, does that relate?
Yeah. It's great graphics and images as well. I'm just thinking to myself, I went to somebody's book launch about 2 weeks ago in New York City, and she never made the ask. I noticed that she never made the ask of how her guests could support her. And one thing that I would suggest if you're using a party as a launch or something where you want to ask for a favor, you have to make the ask during the event. While it might feel awkward or cringe to pause the party and ask people, hey, take out your phone right now. My book's on sale on Kindle. Please buy my book right now. I'm going to stop and give you guys a second. That's the time to do it. If you try to follow up with people a day after, the moment has passed, life goes on, their schedules are busy. So I do suggest for everybody to make your ask during the party itself. Now, you wouldn't make the ask right at the beginning because you haven't given them any value. You haven't hosted a good event yet. Wait till you've added value, hosted a good event, introduced them to new people, or just had a fun time, and then make the ask. But don't wait till the day afterwards.
Yeah, really good point. So here's, let me know if I'm missing anything. So invite 20 people who you think will get along, find something fun to do. Don't think about the book, think about having fun and adding value to them. Put out your invites. You want them to have to, what's the word? Double say yes.
Yes.
What's the word, Nick?
Double opt in.
Thank you. Double opt-in for the RSVPs, reminder emails, have a fun activity to do, invite them in, do some icebreakers, get everyone to know each other, bring value, and then somewhere closer to the end, talk about your book, end the party at the right time when it's still on high, and then repeat. Am I missing anything?
You're pretty good, Melody Ann. I feel like you could write my book. You're really good.
I'm just
don't
listening.
don't forget to use name tags at your event. I will die on this hill, but name tags are really important to create new connections and also to make introverts or shy people feel more welcome. It does create a more welcoming, accepting space. Name tags are like a sports jersey to show that we're all on the same team, that there's not a party of cliques. So I think that's really important as well. But I think you nailed it. I would make the ask, or I would talk about your book perhaps 40 minutes before your party's scheduled to end. So I wouldn't wait too late. At my event that I hosted last night, I waited till the very end of the night. And in hindsight, I wish I would have talked about it a little bit earlier. So I would recommend people do it about 40 minutes beforehand, because that is your goal, that's your purpose. And if anybody has to leave early, you want to make sure everybody hears.
I love it. All right. So Lise has just said, great ideas. Thank you, Nick. And
Thanks,
the
Lise.
Holistic Tooth Fairy has a question. What if I live in a little village and most friends have already bought my book? Any ideas?
That's a great question. I would say go to a nearby village, go to a nearby town. Your book is probably written to serve a larger audience. And thinking about how you can go to another nearby town, whether it's at a library or at a bookstore. One really key important thing, though, is that you have to work hard to collect those RSVPs. What you don't want is a situation where you don't know who's going to show up and you risk only having one or two people show up. Generally, what I say is you don't host an event unless you have 5 quiet yeses. And that's from your core group. And you get 5 people to say yes, that they're going to attend. So I would say, hey, I'm thinking of hosting a little book signing at this place in this town at this time and this date. If I do it, would you come? And so I look for 5 yeses before I make any plans to invite a wider audience.
Yeah. So I have a question. Let's just say the Holistic Tooth Fairy, doesn't know all that many people in the surrounding towns, but what if they went and found, even if they knew one person and found that one person, and that one person knew 20 people and said,
Yeah.
hey, would you like to co-host a party with me around my book? Is that something you would do?
Yes, I love linking up with a co-host. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And I'll include this in the show notes, but I have a whole article that lists the best practice on working with a co-host. Some of the things that I think you can add value to the co-host, if they're going to bring their friends, their network, and oftentimes open up their home to you, is you can handle a lot of the logistics. That means creating the page to collect the RSVPs, doing the name tags, sending the reminder messages and emails, really running the party. I tell you, there's a lot of people who have great homes or houses, know a lot of people, but just don't have the time to organize an event. And when you can show up and say, look, all you have to do is show up and I'll handle everything, it is a big win for both sides. The host, the person's home that it is, gets to see all their friends and bring people into their home, something that they want. And you get to have a venue and get to meet a lot of new people to talk about your book.
Really good point, Nick. Thank you. That's a really good point. All right. So we've not missed anything in kind of the author book launch, are we? Have we missed anything?
The author book launch, I guess I just didn't think too much. I didn't get too stressed about that one main launch idea. I thought about my launch really as the full year that I'm working on my book, that I'm going to be really working and launching my book for a year. And that one particular day, I didn't want to build up too much hopes and expectations around that one day. I wanted to do something that would be fun for me, that I could see and celebrate this very big moment for myself with the people I cared about.
Thank you. That is so well said. Thank you. Because so many people put it all in one day and it's so terrifying. And the Holistic Tooth Fairy says that's so inspiring. Thank you. That's helpful for her as well. So let's kind of take this idea of a cocktail party and let's move it on to YouTube. Let's move it on to TikTok. Because I know you're on YouTube, you're on TikTok, and you do very well there. And a lot of people, they're either there and they're loving it and they're doing really well, or they're not there and they're terrified of it, as scared of that as they are cocktail parties. So can you tell us a little bit about, how do you do videos on TikTok and on YouTube? Like, what is your mindset? What is your kind of 2-hour cocktail party mindset that you bring to that?
I would say that the advice that I have around short form video is generally the best practices that I've learned, which are pretty obvious things. On short form video, you need to have your hook in the first 2.5 seconds or so. The title of your video should probably be the hook, The words that are displayed, if you're going to put some words on top, you need to say those words first and foremost. So, for example, if I was making a video about how to make new friends, I wouldn't start my video by saying, in these days and times, it can be very hard to make new friends. So how can you make, no, I'd start the video by saying, how can you make new friends? Right? I get to the point real quick and real fast right at the beginning. There's a guy that I'll include in the show notes named Nat Eliason, who started doing book reviews on TikTok. And Nat has an incredible article on what worked for him in speaking about and learning how to do short form video. And he had some really good ideas, which was that you need to really grind it out and do about 2 videos a day until you can really feel what the algorithm and what the audience is going to feel and respond to you. That being said, for a lot of people, you're going to waste your time on social media. It's a losing battle, and you're better off probably not doing it, would be my suggestion.
Okay. And then, because I can just imagine some people listening thinking, oh, 2 videos a day? Like, what content will I come up with? So that's my question. What content am I going to come up with if I'm doing 2 videos a day?
So if you've already launched your book, a great place to find the content that will perform well is, and you can guess what I'm going to say, your Kindle highlights. Looking to see where people have highlighted. Those are the key areas that you can immediately create some new content. I see you smiling, Melody, and what do you think about that idea?
Absolutely. And it's funny because some authors come to me and it's like, I've got a book and I want to get on social and I need new content. I'm like, why do you need new content?
Right.
You've just written a 50,000 word book. You have lots of content. Don't create more.
Yeah.
Use what you have.
One idea, which I should take my own advice, but there's no reason that you can't hop on live and do a chapter reading a night from your book. Why not hop on live and say, hey, I'm reading chapter 1 this whole week. I'll be here 7 p.m. I'll be reading 1 chapter a night, however long that takes me, and do live readings on your social. It's just showing up and grinding it out and figuring out what your audience will really relate to, I think.
Yeah. And I've seen authors take their whole book and break it down into social media segments, and then just go through it one by one each day. This is what I'm doing. This section here, this section here. And they'll like this week is chapter 3 week. And they're doing little segments, little readings, quotes, photographs, whatever they have, just pulling apart, I should say, one chapter into pieces. And I think that's a brilliant idea. And what do you put on TikTok?
On my TikTok, I've been really experimenting with it. And I gotta look, I'm gonna be real. I worked for many months and spent thousands of dollars working with video editors, really good video editors, trying to share some of the key concepts from my book. And what was funny was when I was in New York City a couple of weeks ago, I just started to share some of the restaurants and my favorite spots and places in New York. I got hundreds of thousands of views on that style of content. And it was very frustrating because I'd been working so hard to share my book, to try to force it down people. And then I said, oh, well, this is what people want, And sometimes you have to listen to the algorithm and figure out how, okay, I guess somehow I got to go that way and figure out how to work my book into that. The stuff that I share on my book, it's about hooks. It's about how to make new friends, how to meet new people, name tags, best practices for hosting parties and events. One of my most popular pieces of content about my book has been, how do you end a party? I think a lot of people wonder about that. How do you end a party? Do you just wait for everybody to leave? And so I need to film more content like that because that stuff is done well.
Yeah. So how do you end a party? Sorry.
It's a good question, right?
I need to know, yes.
So similar to that one party that you went to in Japan, the first thing that you're going to do is set the expectations beforehand, that your party is only 2 hours long or that your party will be over at a certain time. By setting those expectations in advance, it removes 89% of the awkwardness when it is time to end. The next suggestion that I tell people is to announce something like a last call, where you tell people, hey, everybody, party's scheduled to end at 8 o'clock. It's about 7:45 now. Grab your last drink. We're going to start to wind down soon. I know we all have a work day or a school day tomorrow, so heads up on that. When it's time to end your party, then you'll turn the music down, you'll turn the lights up, you'll thank everybody for coming. And what I start to do is I start to clean up a little and start to tidy. And my friends get the idea. Now, I went to a party last night and they played, have you heard that song by Semisonic, Closing Time? They
Oh,
played Closing Time by Semisonic. They played a Willie Nelson song that was like, This Party's Over. And it's a cute little thing to help people make the exit.
yeah. And that's interesting because it's so much better than those awkward moments. And I know you know the one I'm talking about where like partners come and the one partner kind of saddles up to the other partner very quietly. Everyone can hear, but very quietly
Yes.
just, do you think we should go now?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
kind of
That's real.
eliminates that, right?
That is real. And that happens.
Yes. And that just eliminates that. So thank you. Have we talked to, is there anything else? So lessons from TikTok. You know, book content is important. Don't go out looking for all this extra content in your industry and subject matter for TikTok and YouTube. And people want to see you, the real you.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
just, they want to see you as a human being, not just an author or a speaker or this or that. They want to see you.
Yes.
And
one more thing that I'm thinking about for short form video. So I did an experiment. I hired on Book Talk a young woman. I think she's in Scotland. Her name is on TikTok, Bowie's Books. And I shared about this on my LinkedIn. And I paid her for sponsored content to do a review of my book. And it cost me about $150 for her to make, as an influencer, a little review of my book that she shared on her channel. Now, on her channel, my book had middling results. Maybe it had 1,000 views and some likes and a little bit of comments. But I actually got more value from that by saving her video and sharing it to my other channels. Because like you said, folks do want to see you, but it is pretty fresh to have somebody new doing a nice, thoughtful review of your book. And I tell you, my audience loved that, seeing her speak about my book. So I was very happy with that return on investment for short form video.
Great point. Great point. Are we missing anything else about my tongue is not working today.
Yes.
Short form video or YouTube or TikTok. Are we missing anything else before we move on?
The last thing I learned from my friend Nat was that if you were to do a book review, for example, to say something like, this is the best book to help you with habits, you wouldn't tell them the name of the book right away. You actually want for viewers to watch your whole video through, and watch time through time, watching to the very end, is one of the main indicators that TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts use to determine if a video clip can go viral. And so the opposite of saying that, and what I would do, would be to say, this book can help you learn more about habits. Now, I've read many books that speak about habits, and why I like this book was in chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. These are the things I learned for it. The name of the book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And you would say that part, the name and who it's by, at the very end, and do the reveal of the cover at that time, almost just to keep them watching for an additional 20 or 30 seconds to wait till the end of the video.
Yeah. Brilliant advice. Thank you so much. And earlier we looked at your icebreakers, and I also know you have some like mocktails on your website as well.
Yeah.
You have so much stuff. So I just have one more that I want to share with everyone. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to, here we go. So everyone can see it. Tell us, so this is another resource, which, by the way, everyone, is in the description. The link is in the description. So tell us about this resource that you have on your website.
So this is my book cover. Are we looking at the right thing? So this is the book cover. Oh, yes. I'm so excited. So this is the executive summary. And this is where you can download a checklist of my book. You can read through the first 3 chapters, and you can get a list of exactly how to prepare on the day of your party. So if you're thinking about hosting a book swap or a book club, by the way, for your listeners, consider hosting a book swap. People go crazy for a book swap gathering. It doesn't have to be about a cocktail party. I use that phrase cocktail party, but there's not a single drink recipe in my book. This is an operating system for gathering. And you can download that from my website, www.party.pro. You got to check it out.
Yeah, I think you offer so many amazing resources. And I just wanted to show that off. The link for that is in the description. It's a very long link, but it is in the description. Thank you very much for offering so many amazing resources. So what are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Would you like to know a secret new thing that I'm doing that I was not even planning to tell you about, but I will share it to you? And I'm going to put the link in the chat and see if it works for you to load it up. It's still a draft, but this is a marketing experiment that I'm working on. And you might think it's absolutely ridiculous, but here's what it is.
Do you want me to share this?
Sure. Yes, we can share the screen. That's fine for your readers.
I just wasn't sure if I didn't want to share it without your permission. So I wanted to make sure that was okay.
No, it's fine. So I'm still finishing this. I'm writing up the article. I'm doing some data, stats, and analysis. And as Melody Ann brings it up, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm going around to places on Google Maps, and I'm taking pictures of my book at the stores. And I'm taking pictures of my book, and I'm uploading it to Google Maps. And I've gotten over 200,000 views on these photos with my book. Now, will it result in additional book sales? Does it help me for marketing? Will I get banned from Google for doing this? I'm not sure yet. I'm still figuring it out. It's very hard to track book attribution, but this is an example of a little marketing experiment that costs me nothing. When I'm out, I think about it like a hobby. But it's an example of how I think about my book launch as a year-long process. And I'm trying and experimenting with so many different little things. So this is one of them. If you scroll down, you'll see some of my most popular photos. And so there's 4 of them right there. And you can see that I'm taking pictures of the food or the outside with my book cover, and I'm uploading them. And each of those photos has over 10,000 views on Google Maps. Yeah. It's just a subtle way to keep my book top of mind.
I love that. So one of my authors actually does that. She calls them editorial shots, and she takes her book everywhere with her. And if she's in a park and there's an interesting statue, she'll like put the book with the statue. Or if, sometimes a friend of hers or a reader will like send her a photograph, and she puts all of these on her Instagram. She calls them book editorial shots.
I love that.
All over the place. Very similar thing. She doesn't use the Google map though. She doesn't pin where it is. So if she's watching, that'll be a new thing for her. And Holistic Tooth Fairy says, wow, interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really, really appreciate that, Nick.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Where can people get your book?
You can check out my book anywhere books are sold online. It's on Amazon. I recorded the audiobook myself on Audible. And then I have this micro site, this website called www.party.pro, where I've just listed a lot of helpful articles. I think I've built like an interesting micro site, and I don't know if a lot of authors are doing this, but mine has tons of articles on there. And I'm experimenting with that to reach new visitors, new readers as well.
Yeah. And that's www.party.pro.com. Go there for the information and just to see what Nick is doing. Because before the show, I was telling you, I was looking at this and I really liked the what to do next.
Yes.
So, there's something to steal from you. So that's fabulous. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Yeah, great.
And where can people reach out?
Find me on social media. On social media, I'm at Nick Gray News. I post on Instagram a lot, on Twitter, on TikTok. And then I have a website that's www.nickgray.net, N-E-T, where I keep a blog and I share some of my fun favorite things in my famous Friends newsletter.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wealth of information and fun at the same time, which is probably kind of like what your cocktail parties are like, right? Fun and informative. So thank you very much for joining us today, Nick.
Absolutely. Good luck, everybody, with your books. You're going to do great.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Author Nation is here to provide you with a path from idea to published and profiting. So join the community and learn what it's like to work with like-minded professionals. Next week, we'll be talking to Chad Peavy about writing a personally challenging book and how to leverage it once it's done. So join us then.